We want to know.
Yeah, look, Todd Blanche is a lawyer himself. He was Donald Trump's personal lawyer. He knows that the statement the Department of Justice put out is total BS. The fact that she was fired doesn't absolve her of the legal responsibility to comply with the subpoena. And I agree with what you said about next year, perhaps, but I'm not giving up on this year. She's still under a legal obligation to appear on April 14th. And we're going to hold her and Chairman Comer to account to make sure that that happens. And we have tools today in this Congress that we could pursue, just as the Republicans attempted to pursue with respect to the Clintons. So we're not going to take any of that off the table. Our expectation is she comes in.
She was supposed to sit in that chair on April 14th. She was supposed to answer questions under oath. And then 3 days before she had to show up, she was gone. Not retired, not reassigned, fired. And the Department of Justice, the very institution she ran, immediately released a statement arguing she no longer had to comply with the subpoena. The timing wasn't suspicious, it was surgical. This is the story of Pam Bondi, the Epstein files, and a cover-up that Congress is now fighting to unravel before the trail goes cold. Pam Bondi served as the 82nd Attorney General of the United States. She came into that role with the full backing of Donald Trump, confirmed and trusted. Her job was to run the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world, and one of her most critical responsibilities, one that Congress had passed into law, was ensuring the public release of the Jeffrey Epstein files, the full files, the unredacted truth. That didn't happen. What was released was a fraction of what exists. Survivors, people who gave sworn statements to the FBI, people who described what happened to them in detail, say their own testimony was never made public. They know it exists because they were the ones who gave it. Somewhere between the law being passed and the files being released, someone made a decision. Someone decided what the public would see and what they wouldn't. Congress wanted to know who made that call, so they issued a subpoena, and they scheduled Pam Bondi to appear on April 14th. That's when things got interesting. Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, stepped forward with a statement. His argument? That because Pam Bondi had been fired, she was no longer legally obligated to appear, that a subpoena issued to the attorney general no longer applied now that she held that title in the past tense. Legal scholars, congressional members, and even some Republicans weren't buying it.
Congress?
I think it's very plausible that we will. We had a bipartisan vote on the committee to issue the subpoena. Today, Congressman Khanna and Congresswoman Mace sent a letter to Chairman Comer saying they both expect that the subpoena be complied with and that he, Chairman Comer, hold her to account with respect to the subpoena. I think if we got a vote on the floor of the House for contempt, it'd be a very difficult vote for a number of Republicans, especially given the fact that Donald Trump already fired Pam Bondi.
Right. Because here's what the law actually says. Firing someone doesn't erase their legal obligation to testify. It never has. A subpoena is not a job description. It follows the individual, not the title. But the administration didn't seem concerned with what the law says. They were more interested in what they could get away with. Members of Congress called it exactly what it was, an attempt to redefine oversight itself. If the executive branch gets to decide when oversight applies, then oversight is meaningless.
Gavel. But I want to drill down on the Department of Justice essentially saying we don't have to comply, right? Like what they are doing is they are redefining or attempting to redefine what oversight actually looks like. They are trying to set the agenda here, and they are trying to set the rules. And I think that's dangerous, Congressman, because if they can get away with it on this, they will continue to get away with it on all of these other things, not just the Department of Justice, but the Department of Homeland Security, right? The DOJ, the DHS, ICE, we can go down the line with all the acronyms. Oversight, the people who need oversight don't get to decide what oversight looks like. Right. The Congress is who gets to decide what oversight.
The Department of Homeland Security, ICE, the FBI, every single agency that operates in the shadows could simply claim immunity the moment a subpoena got too close. And here is the part that should make your blood run cold. 2.5 to 3 million Epstein files have not been released.
It looks like. So take me to January 2027. Let's just say Democrats in the House do have the gavel. What are y'all doing first?
Well, with respect to Pam Bondi, assuming she hasn't appeared by then, I certainly hope she will, we would need to reissue the subpoena. And then if she fails to comply with the subpoena at that point, hold her in contempt, either civil contempt, which would go through the courts, or criminal contempt, which would go through the Justice Department and be referred to them to decide whether they want to prosecute. We'd have to pursue perhaps both of those options. But I think we can do that this year with Pam Bondi if she doesn't appear on April 14th or sometime in the very near.
Not partially released, not delayed, not being reviewed, simply not released. And yet, Todd Blanche stood in front of reporters and stated that all files had been made available to the public. Members of Congress, who have reviewed the evidence, say that statement is, in their words, total nonsense. So now you have a fired attorney general who doesn't want to testify, an acting attorney general who is actively misrepresenting the status of document releases, and millions of files that survivors say contain witness statements naming powerful individuals sitting in a vault somewhere unseen. Who made the decision to illegally redact certain documents?
It's pretty powerful.
Look, Congress passed a law. It said the Epstein files need to be released to the public. Here are the limited categories of things that can be redacted. The Department of Justice, and Pam Bondi was responsible for the Department of Justice during this time, did not comply with the law. It is a legitimate oversight responsibility of the United States Congress to figure out why the law wasn't filed. Who made the decision? I want to know who made the decision to illegally redact certain documents, especially those that were embarrassing or worse for Donald Trump.
Is that someone who can be held accountable once you know who that person is?
Absolutely, yeah. And if that person is Pam Bondi, then we'll have to hold her accountable. But she knows. She was in charge.
I mean, meaning if it wasn't Pam, it was someone in the White House itself.
That's right.
In the administration.
That's right.
That is the question being asked on the floor of Congress right now. Who specifically looked at those files and said, these sections are embarrassing, these sections stay hidden? And were those redactions ordered from within the Department of Justice or from somewhere higher? Because if the directive came from the White House itself, that changes everything. The bipartisan pressure is building. Congresswoman Nancy Mace and Congressman Khanna, two names from opposite sides of the aisle, both signed letters demanding Bondi comply with the subpoena. Congressman Raskin has gone further, stating that the removal of Pam Bondi does not, in any legal or moral sense, reduce Congress's right to her sworn testimony. The committee's oversight interest doesn't expire when someone loses their job. And now, in a move that signals the investigation is widening, Bill Gates has been called to testify before Congress regarding his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He is not the last name on that list. But here's where the story stands today, and why it matters beyond the names involved. No whistleblowers from inside the Department of Justice.
That person will be held accountable.
Imagine with Pam Bondi being a private citizen, and if Democrats take back the majority in November, that subpoena power to actually get her to provide information is going to be even more powerful. But I want to ask some procedural questions. One, some of the documents that survivors claimed were missing in the release of the files, such as transcriptions of interviews that they had conducted with the FBI about people as
witness statements.
Exactly. What have those been released yet? What's the status of negotiations with the Justice Department on getting and identifying those sorts of missing items? And then who is next on the subpoena?
No current or former DOJ staffers who were involved in the redaction process have stepped out from the shadows. The people who know exactly what was removed from those files and why are still silent. Whether that silence is voluntary or enforced, no one is saying. Pam Bondi knows who gave the order.
Survivors, they have been very clear that those witness statements that you just described, a number of them have not been released. They know those statements exist because they made them, and they haven't been released. In terms of negotiations with the Justice Department, the acting Attorney General Todd Blanche reiterated that all the files have been released, despite the fact that we know that 2.5 to 3 million files haven't been released. So we're going to continue pushing on that. We have a number of additional depositions and transcribed interviews coming up. You mentioned Bill Gates. There will be others following that. But I think right now we really are going to...
If she didn't give it herself, she knows who did. And the administration knows that her testimony, under oath, on the record, could collapse whatever carefully constructed wall currently stands between the truth and the public. That wall bought itself 3 more days when she was fired.
Have any whistleblowers, current or former DOJ officials who are staffers who've been involved with these redactions come forward as whistleblowers?
Not to my knowledge.
Maybe longer if Congress doesn't push back hard enough. There are files that haven't been released. There are witness statements survivors say they gave that the FBI has, that the public has never seen. There are names in those documents that someone decided were too dangerous to print. And the one person who was scheduled to answer for all of it suddenly doesn't work there anymore. So here's the question that no one in power seems willing to answer. If the files were already fully released, if the redactions were legal, if Pam Bondi has nothing to hide, then why is everything moving so hard to keep her out of that chair? Who are they protecting, and how much longer will they get away with it? Subscribe to Starscope Daily, because the answers they're trying to bury, we're going to keep digging until they surface.